Hey, how you doing? Arthur Wu here, and the topic of today's video is going to be, will AI affect filmmaking? This is a question that's been on my mind over the past couple of weeks, ever since Lensa went viral. So, if you've been taking a social media detox, you just haven't been online for whatever reason, Lensa is this platform that a bunch of people were uploading their photos to, and the AI technology within Lensa basically generated a bunch of artsy photos of these people in return. And people were posting it on their profile pictures and on their posts. And then what sprung from that was a really interesting debate and controversy, quote unquote controversy, about how AI really generates the artwork. Some people say that the way AI learns is to take art from different artists across the web without their permission, and then generating art that's very similar to what it quote unquote learned from, and basically taking their intellectual property. And the other argument is, well, that's not really how it works. AI just uses those data sets of images and things of that nature, and it kind of figures out what is a cat, what is a human, and so on and so forth. And then it tries to create something brand new, not unlike a human. So if you're a photographer or a painter or a filmmaker and you see something that really inspires you, whether it's someone else's work, then what you would do is you would say, you know what, I really like this technique. I'm going to learn this technique and use it in my style. So there's a couple of different angles there, and this video is not about whether, what's right or wrong, but I'm going to assume, like other technologies, that this is going to move full steam ahead. What does that mean for people who work in the visual arts field? Photography, illustration, painting, filmmaking. Because the things I've seen over the past few weeks have been very, very impressive, but also a little concerning, in the sense that, okay, well, now we're getting to the point where the AI can create photorealistic images. It can create people who aren't even real, but they look real. It can create lighting that looks amazing. That's world-class lighting. And so at a certain point, it's like, all right, well, if this technology can essentially remove the technicians and the craftspeople away from this process, what does that mean? Does that mean that people are going to be out of work, and so on and so forth? So all these questions just started coming up online. I really just said, you know what? This is something that's concerning to me, could potentially alter my career path. So let's dive into it. Let's figure out what it's really all about. And so I joined Midjourney. I did a month subscription. I just dove 100% in. I watched a bunch of tutorials. I read the manual, and I just spent hours and hours just trying to figure out, okay, can I create something like a storyboard, that's something that I would actually use? And what I found has actually relieved me a little bit, because, I think that the way I approach things is, if I'm anxious about something, I think for me, the best way to alleviate that feeling is to approach it directly and just kind of get it over with. And so I'm going to go through an example of what I created, because I really wanted to see, like, okay, well, how realistic is it going to be for this thing to potentially take over my career, for instance. So I'm just going to pull up these images on the screen here. And this was a exercise for me. I was just really inspired by this song called Losing You by Solange. It just started playing one day, and it got stuck in my head, and I just had it on repeat on Spotify. And I was like, you know what, this is evoking a certain imagery in my head. Why don't I see if I can use this as a case study for Midjourney and see if I could create something that's close to what I was thinking. Just do lots of trial and error, and just like reading the manual and looking at different discussion boards, I was able to come up with something that was close to what I was thinking. So I'm just going to go through these images really quickly. This first one here, it's a couple basically who have just had a fight, or maybe they're at the end of their relationship or at the end of something, and they're kind of going through the feelings. And this lighting is really great. I really like what was out here. Second image, and this was a little bit tricky for me to figure out, is how do you get the same character in the same room or a similar room and similar lighting and make it consistent? Like, that's really where the real test was for me. And I was able to generate that. And then the next one was, okay, well, how do I get these two people to now interact in a way that has certain emotions that I'm kind of feeling in my head? And so, even though the background is a bit different, the clothing is slightly different. So there's a bit of a difference there that I couldn't really specify and make completely the same. This next one here, I really wanted a shot of a bedroom. So it had a similar vibe to the other images, but it wasn't the same bedroom, and I didn't know how to get back to that same bedroom. Next one, I really wanted a solo shot of her, just kind of a silhouette, just kind of thinking in a private space, such as a bathroom. So after several images, I settled on this one. And the next one is she's back out in the street, she's kind of wandering around. And then the last one, this one kind of looks the most, not really photoreal to me, but it kind of had a similar vibe as the previous image. I got a lot of great feedback on this. Essentially, people were saying, wow, this is incredible. How did you do this? And so on and so forth. Just a lot of trial and error. And I think I generated around 150, 200 images to kind of come up with this. And so through this process, it actually alleviated some of my anxiety about, okay, you know, AI is taking over and we're all gonna be out of jobs. Because the amount of work that it actually took to get me to this place, it was actually quite a bit. I had to be very specific. But the thing that was great, and I've heard people say, is that AI is used as an inspiration tool. And I really found that during this exercise because I had very specific frames and lighting in my mind. But when I was going through and generating these various images, it actually gave me different alternative angles, different alternative lighting. Even though I was very specific, it just kind of spit out some random ones. And I was like, you know what? This actually works better with what I was thinking. After working through it for a while, I would say that my guess is that live production, as far as filmmaking is concerned, is safe for the time being, maybe the next few years. That's just my guess. And the reason why is because I think that this technology is still fairly rudimentary. Like, you really have to dive into it and you really have to spend a lot of time into it. Now, there's a lot of other tools that are really techy that can do some pretty impressive stuff, but the average person isn't going to be doing that just quite yet. And so, you know, how do I think it's going to affect filmmaking? Well, we're already seeing it in certain productions. Like, I've talked to people who are doing storyboards, they're using it to storyboard. Some people who are using it to generate ideas for production design. There's actually a platform called Runway. They have a tool which is really, really impressive. I'll post a link below, but it does rotoscoping. So you can actually remove like the background. It's highly, highly impressive. So in terms of filmmaking, I really think that anything that's computer-based at the moment, in the near future, and within the next 5 years or so, I think AI is definitely going to kind of find its way in there if this technology continues to develop. My thinking is that, like any computer-based work that I'm doing, I definitely want to be up to date as far as what AI is actually doing. So I think it behooves people, if people are working in computer-based roles, to at least be aware of what this technology is doing. So while it may not replace jobs right away, I do see it being used a little bit more as time goes on and as the technology gets better. Live action, people are still going to want to see actual things, actual people, documentaries, interviews, things of that nature. And there's a lot of ethical questions that come up with, like, okay, well, you know, if people create a likeness of someone, like, what does that mean? These are all like really theoretical things, but as far as like what the practical actually means, I think the implementation, for me at least, I think it's just going to take a while for it to actually affect live production filmmaking. But I'm definitely going to keep a close eye on it. And I'm going to post another video below because there was another video that I saw about artists and providing their value in the marketplace. And it sounds really capitalistic, but I think it's really worth a listen. I think the argument was made that art is always going to exist. Creativity is always going to exist in some form or fashion, because as humans, that's what we do. Whether or not you get paid for it is a completely different topic. If you ever got a melody in your head and you were humming it, or you had an inspiration to cook something, or you wanted to draw something, or wanted to write something, anything like that, that is all really just creative by nature. Now the question is, how are we going to monetize that and be able to provide that in the marketplace? Will we be able to utilize AI in order to kind of supplement that if AI somehow takes over a lot of the repetitive tasks? Or if AI maybe even becomes something that drives the main tasks. We don't really know yet. It's kind of early. If you really want to learn any of these platforms like Midjourney, in this situation, I really think it's beneficial for people to just look up tutorials on YouTube as well as just read the manual, because that's the best way that people are going to learn. Because I can give you a certain prompt, but that's not going to help you necessarily create an entire thing on your own. Yeah, I think just kind of sitting down for a week or two, even at night, and just going through it, just spending some time on it, it's going to be, in my mind, that would be beneficial to anyone who might be worried, because that might allow you to see a different perspective of like, okay, how do these tools actually work? All right, guys, well, until next time, peace.